Hey there, and welcome to my free dog portrait class. In this class, you will learn how to paint a realistic dog in watercolor, and I am so excited and honored that you have signed up for this class. Today will be extremely valuable in helping you learn important fundamentals when it comes to getting started with watercolor and painting pet portraits. In this class, I'm going to cover my favorite watercolor supplies for painting pets, color mixing, as well as show you different strokes on how to achieve those tricky fur textures in watercolor. Then we will walk through how to paint a golden retriever step by step, so by the end of this class you'll leave feeling so much more confident in your watercolor skills to begin your journey as a pet portrait artist. So if you dream of painting pet portraits, whether it be for a hobby or a business, you're off to a great start by signing up for this class. And I know how intimidating it can be to get started with painting pet portraits, but I want you to set any fear and doubt that you have aside because I'll walk you through the process in simple steps, even if you have very minimal painting experience. You should have received an email with the supplies list, the reference photo, and a free outline of the dog that we will be painting today, so be sure to read through that email first to prepare for this class. This free class is available for only 1 week, so you'll want to carve out 90 minutes over the next few days before this class expires. So find yourself a quiet place in your home, maybe that's your office, a bedroom, or outside on your porch, wherever feels most comfortable and peaceful for your painting practice. The supplies that I'll be using in this class are watercolor paints in the colors of yellow ochre, Van Dyke brown, burnt sienna, Payne's gray, quinacridone gold deep, Algerian crimson, cadmium red, or otherwise an orange, and Dr. Martin's pH bleed-proof white. I'll also have 2 pointed round synthetic hair brushes in the sizes of a round and 8 and a 0, and then an Arches 140-pound cold pressed paper. You'll also need a jar of water and a paper towel. I'll explain more about the supplies once we get started painting. If you don't have these supplies, either use supplies that you have on hand already, or you now have an excuse to visit your art store or quickly order them online. But if you're serious about getting started as a pet portrait artist, I recommend making the investment in the right supplies. Even the type of watercolor paper you use will make a big difference in the outcome of your painting. The beautiful thing about watercolor is that the supplies are very affordable and most will last you a really long time. Quick before we dive in, if we've never met before, hi, I'm Allie. I live in Wisconsin with my husband, our son, and our English setter, Dawes. As you can tell from my pictures, we love to be outside and go for hikes and fly fish. Our dog especially loves splashing in the creeks and scaring all the fish away, but we love him anyways. You may know me as Windswept Design Studio. I run a watercolor business where I've been able to paint hundreds of pets for people all over the world, as well as teach aspiring artists how to get started in painting pet portraits too. Now, as a new mom, I look forward to spending my time in my quiet studio and painting pet portraits during nap times. Painting pets has brought me so much joy while earning an income for our family. It truly is my dream career, and my 7-year-old dog-obsessed self would be so proud of what I am doing today. Now, I want you to imagine what it would feel like being able to paint a pet portrait as a gift for your friend who just recently lost their dog. Or surprising your family member with a painting of their puppy on Christmas morning. Or earning a $300 commission while painting a pet portrait that brings you and your customer joy. Pet portraits make the ultimate gift, and they are a special way of sharing your artistic talents with the world, and I'm excited that this class will jumpstart that journey for you. And if you really enjoy this class and are serious about painting pet portraits, be sure to stick around until the end of this class, and I have a really helpful resource for you. Okay, let's go ahead and grab our supplies. I'll switch around my camera so we can get started painting. Alrighty, so let me just overview the supplies before I go ahead and get started painting. And then I will zoom in as we get started. So first off, the paper that I'm using today is Arches 140-pound cold press paper. As you can see, there is nice texture, and that texture, also known as tooth. A cold press paper has really nice tooth to it, and it allows us to be able to color mix, and it'll hold paint really, really nicely without drying too quickly. It's going to give you the most beautiful watercolor textures too. The reason I do cold press is because it does have more tooth and we have more time to work with it. Hot press would dry a lot faster. The other thing that's really important to note is that the watercolor paper you use will make a huge, huge difference, more than your paints, more than your brushes, when it comes to the quality of your painting. So 140-pound cold press, 100% cotton paper. So the 100% cotton is the professional grade paper that really makes a big difference when it comes to colors and drying. And you'll notice if you try student grade paper, it just dries a lot differently, and the color mixing and abilities to hold the paint is a lot different. Don't let the paper you have hold you back today. Just know that for the future, if you are interested in, diving more into watercolor pet portraits, I recommend the 100% cotton paper. Watercolor, being a water-based paint, does make your paper curl. So if you wanted to, this is just a good old painter's tape. This is what I use, and I'll tape my paintings down. Today I'm not going to, only because I want to be able to rotate it just to show you and pick it up. But if you have a painter's tape that you can tape right around the edges of your painting, that will help keep it not to warp so much. So our paints today, this is all I'll be using today for the class. I only have 8 colors. So I have a yellow ochre. This is a Van Dyke brown. This is a Payne's gray. Up here I have burnt sienna. And this is a color that I can't really pronounce. Let's see, it is right here. It's not necessary, to be honest, if you have a burnt sienna, but this is the Quinadrone Gold Deep. It just is a much orangier version of the burnt sienna brown. And then I have a Alzerian crimson, and then right here is a cadmium red, which really is an orange. So as long as you have a brown, a really nice dark blue, a yellow, and some type of burnt sienna, golden brown, and a red and an orange, you are going to be great for today's lesson. The other color that I love is this Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. And we will not use that until the very end for those finishing details. As you can see here in the whiskers, it really helps to make a portrait look a lot more realistic. So I highly recommend that. And then when it comes to brushes, so you really could get this painting done with 2 brushes. I recommend a size 6, like a size 6 or a size 4. And having a pointed round brush makes a big difference as well, because it's super versatile. As you can see here, you can get nice detail. And then also you could get a bigger, when you press down with your brush, a bigger wash. The other one that I do recommend, unless you have a nice point on your bigger brush, is something really tiny. So this one's a 000, and it is my fine liner brush, and it's what I use to do those tiny detailed hairs at the very, very end of a painting. And let's see, we then of course need our water jar and paper towel. The paper towel I use a lot, so you'll definitely want that. Let's just first begin with a little bit of color mixing before we dive in. That way, if you are like me, my paints are from a tube, and I have already placed them in my palette, but they are dry, so I'm touching them and they are rock hard. It's very similar to working with a cake palette, where you already have paints that come in these little squares. So we have to activate those to get wet. So that's what I'll do right now. Just going to level us out here a little bit. All right, so let's begin by adding in, you can just add a few drops of water if your paints are not wet. That's what I'll do right now. I don't like to make it too wet the way that I paint. I just like to have them activated like this, but not sitting in a pool of water. So let's discuss some color mixing. So here's our reference photo. As you can see, there are some really light areas, also some really rich, like reddish brown colors. So I want to show you a range of what we'll be working with. When it comes to color mixing for the lightest areas of the dog's face, we are going to be working with yellow ochre and also adding in just a little titch of the Van Dyke brown. It'll help to make it not so yellow. And then I dab my paper towel with not a whole lot of paint on my brush. That is going to be our lightest color that we're working with today. Besides, of course, the bleed-proof white. And then now some of those warmer golden tones will be a mixture of the burnt sienna and the yellow ochre. So there's some of our midtones. And then next, some of our really dark areas that are really nice, rich and red. So the burnt sienna. I have, like I mentioned, that really pretty gold, orangey brown color. If you don't have that, what you'll need to do, that's not a typical color in a palette. So the burnt sienna mixed with the red. See how we're getting a nice, warm, rich, burnt red brown there? So those are some of the areas that you'll see in the ear. And then we definitely will be using more of our Van Dyke brown in areas just as is. So Van Dyke brown is really similar to any type of chocolate brown that you have on your brush. To get a lighter color, all you need to do is pick up a little bit of water, dab your paper towel, and there we have a lighter color. That is how watercolor works, which I know is a lot different than acrylics and oils. And then what may surprise you is I don't have a black in my palette today. What I do to create black is a combination of Payne's Gray and brown. So that combination of Payne's Gray and your Van Dyke brown is going to give what appears to be close to a black color, but not true black. If you've been working with art for a while, you'll find that a lot of artists try and stay away from a true black color just because it's very predictable and it's just not quite as rich and lifelike. So that's why it's fun to create our own rich, dark color. And then again, if you want to use lighter areas, you just pick up more water and less paint on your brush. All right, so that is, in a nutshell, the colors that we'll be color mixing throughout this painting. We will work on color mixing as we work through the painting. We won't have a variety of colors already pre-mixed. I am excited to get started with you all today. I'm going to start with, I have a size 8, but if you have whatever your bigger medium-sized brushes, size 6, size 8, both can do a perfect job for where we are going to start, which is up in the ear here. So I typically always start in areas like the ear or anywhere that seems not quite as intense. Like the eyes can be kind of intense. So and what I mean by intense is just that you need to get them pretty accurate for the painting to come to life. So I always like to warm up in areas that aren't quite so much pressure. I'm going to begin by mixing my yellow ochre and some Van Dyke brown for my base layer. Even a little hint of the burnt sienna to warm it up. So I want to use mostly water, a little bit of paint. This is going to be our base layer, so I'll just first begin by adding that in. Again, if I need more water, I'll just pick that up. Do a nice, thin, even layer here. Even leave some of the white of the paper showing through. And I just want to make sure I don't leave any harsh edges, so I'm just going to continue to spread that out with more water until I run out of paint. I don't want any of those harsh drying lines. If I need more paint though, I'm going to pick that up and continue to push that around. Definitely going to be a little bit darker towards the top of the dog here. Just adding it into my ear. I just want to make sure that it's light enough so I can have some highlights, but have this as my base for the highlight. And I don't want to make it incredibly a wet area everywhere, so I'm just using kind of a nice light thin layer for this base. Nice and light around the face here. Got to mix up some more color. So again, the yellow ochre, a little bit of the Van Dyke brown, and then the burnt sienna. And don't worry if you have to mix up more color if you run out and it's just not exactly perfect. Start on another area of the dog. So like, for example, down on his neck is going to be darker anyways. So we'll just start there with a new mixed color, just in case it's not exactly perfect. So for this down here, I just want to make sure that I kind of flare out some of those hairs. So I'll just paint those fun with the pointed round tip of my brush in different directions. If I need to soften them, I'll just go back through with my brush. But this golden retriever has really pretty long wispy hair, so I just want to be able to show that. Okay, so there is our first layer, and I am going to wait for those areas to dry, but I'll work my way back up to the top of the head now by mixing the burnt sienna with the Van Dyke brown or any type of brown that you have in your palette. That's going to give us a nice warm color. I'm going to dab it on my paper towel. I just don't want that much. So I'm first going to begin, careful not to touch the painting where it could be wet. It's just by adding in another layer on the ear. So this ear gets a little bit darker in areas. I just want to show the variation of those hairs, but this is our base layer, so we're not going to show necessarily the detail as much. So just dropping that in there. Getting lighter as I work my way up and smoothing it out with my clean brush. Around the corner of the ear here, it's definitely going to be a lot darker. Even add some hairs up top. And then can even smooth some of that out on the top of the head here with any excess paint we have, because it's just a nice rounded darker edge for the head up here. All right, taking that paint, we're going to continue on into this ear. Nice thin layer over here too. Can even show some hairs flaring out of the ear at this point. I'm just going to smooth it out. So taking some of those darker colors again, adding them into the neck area. Might still be wet for you, but that's okay. These are just the base layers, so it's okay if it does any expansion and bleeds out. just want to add in another darker layer underneath where the chin overlaps the neck. Okay, so I just want to have that kind of dry before I start to layer in even more of the shapes, dark shapes around the face here. I'm not working on the inner face yet. I just want to start mixing up some of those darker colors. So I'm going to take the Van Dyke Brown, and I'm also going to take a little Payne's Gray, and that's going to give me that nice, richer brown, but not like a warm brown. It's got kind of that dark grayish brown appearance to it. So with that, should be getting drier. If yours is needing to dry a little bit longer, just be patient. But otherwise, I am going to begin by adding in some of that darker color, which is right underneath the chin line here. And again, I'll just add a little thinner of the layer and let it expand out. The darkest area, one of the darkest areas of the dog, is right here along where the ear meets the face. And then I'll take my clean brush and just fan those areas out to show those really pretty hair colors in variation. So we don't want just all one color of hair. So I'm just going to show that. There's a nice deep dark shadow in the neck here. Just taking my brush and helping to smooth some of those hairs out. Even paint some down below here. Just using the real pointed thin area of my brush right now to draw pretty much those hairs. Some are going to have more pressure, be a little thicker. Even taking some of that warmer brown mixed with the Payne's Gray. I just want to ever so slightly add some more, a little texture up in the ear. So I'll just add some darker hairs around the ear. And then now coming back down here, this is where it also needs to get darker along the face. So I'm just doing a few swipes like that. We'll let that dry. I want to warm up the ears just ever so slightly so the burnt sienna mixed with our brown, a nice thin layer. So I'll just dab that on my paper towel. I just want to warm up the ear area here. And I'll just smooth that out. Do the same for over here. And add a few hairs up top. To help cover up that outline. Okay, so next I am going to build up the layers even more, making sure that this is starting to get dry, because at this point now it's going to start to expand and I don't want it to do that as much. I'm going to just switch to a smaller pointed round brush. So I have this size 6. So for these deep shadow areas, I'm taking the Van Dyke Brown. I definitely want it to be more brown. Maybe a little bit of this burnt sienna to warm it up even more. And then to make it darker, adding in a little Payne's Gray. So I want just that nice rich, almost black looking color. Okay. So that part's still feeling kind of wet for me. I'm just going to start at the very top of my ear and paint very carefully down. Now that might be a little too dark. If I want to warm that up, I'll just grab more brown, add it into that mixture. And then as I work my way down the ear here, this is where I'm going to start to paint some of those nice dark layers. And then we want them to appear like hair, so we'll paint them and have them fan out. So you want to have a good amount of paint and water on your brush. You don't want too much where you can't control it and it would pool, so you just want to have a little bit here. The bigger the brush, the longer the paint on your brush will last, and you don't need to pick up as much. So I'm just working on those nice deep layers. And then as I work my way down here, I'll just add more water and start to fade them out. Keeping with that same dark color, I'll come up on this side of the ear here, paint around the lower half. Work my way up around the face. Can even do some that are coming into the ear now. So just using nice light pressure to paint those hairs. Okay, so next I just want to start to warm up some of those hair areas down below here. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm worried my light is taking away from what I see for the warmth. So I think that looks good, so you can kind of see the warmth. I'm going to switch to a little bit of a larger brush here just because I want to get some flatter washes. Now to get the warmth is that burnt sienna color. I'm just only going to use that for now. I really need to warm this up. This golden has a really pretty umbery burnt coat. Ginger maybe is probably the better way to describe it. Okay, so I like the way that looks. I just wanted to warm it up. We'll continue to add layers, but for right now, let's add that warmth down below into the chin where we were just kind of painting. So I'm just taking that burnt sienna and mixing it with my brown. We'll just start to add that in. You can paint some nice darker washes or thicker washes around the ear here. And then fan them out. So depending on how yours is drying, if you do it too soon, it's not going to still layer on as well as if you were to wait. So I'm just being really careful about how I'm applying some of these layers. I want to add some more over here. I'm just painting little tiny strokes to give the texture. Just going to smooth some of that out there. Let's add some down here. Just want to use whatever's left on my brush. I don't want a lot. I'm just adding a little bit more into the area. Even paint some thinner strokes. That's why I love this brush, because I can get such nice thin lines with it. I'm going to add some down below here. Fix some of this up. I don't want it to be a harsh line. Okay, one more spot I want to warm up here, bringing in that burnt sienna. Just adding a little titch of hairs on this side of the face. This layer should help to darken and enrich the area that we were painting as you add more warmth and dark layers. So as this dries, it should dry a little bit lighter. It's still wet down in this area. So for now, I'm going to work on the face and adding in more warm layers. So grabbing this burnt sienna, which is a very popular color for what I'm painting today in this golden, just going to mix that and maybe a little bit of this yellow ochre. So I have this nice warm golden color. Just dabbing it on my paper towel. I'm first going to start by adding in the layer around the face. I want it to be a little bit warmer. Might even bring in some of this burnt orange color that I have. And bringing it down and around the mouth area. So using a nice smooth stroke right now, just adding in some of those layers. And I don't want it to be a harsh edge, so I'll just grab some water on my brush and smooth it out. And then as we work our way down, bringing in some of those burnt colors with browns, I'm going to start to show hair texture over top of that light patch. To do that, I'm just painting ever so lightly and fanning out those strokes. Okay, let's grab some of that same paint color that we were mixing up, the burnt sienna and the yellow ochre. Now you don't need a ton, but this is where we're going to start to shape some of the dog's face. So I'm just going to start to add some of those in there, like that block, and then I'll get rid of that paint on my brush, and I'm just going to go over the edges, and that's going to help to smooth it down around the bridge of the nose, even some around the eye here, and to the side of the face. So these are very thin layers. You can even work it back up into the forehead. If you run out of paint, just pick some of that up. But I'm just using mostly water, tiny bit of paint, working my way around sculpting this dog in a light base layer. I'm going to add some more underneath the eye here. Some down and around the nose. Grabbing more of that paint, going to add some around the mouth. Add it back around the nose here. Got a little dark, just going to smooth it out with my paintbrush here. So I don't really love harsh base layer lines, so that's why I smooth them out. Let's see, things are looking good. Maybe a little more underneath the eye here. Time to add some more hair detail in the ear. So I'm actually going to switch to a little bit of a smaller one, the size 6 that I like, pointed round. So this time, start to add in some of those same kind of tones I see here. So grabbing brown, mostly brown, maybe a little bit of that Payne's gray just to help neutralize it, but otherwise we want it fairly warm. I'm gonna even add a little burnt sienna to it. Okay. So I am just going to very carefully paint some strokes of hair. So just pressing ever so lightly. Adding some on the outer edge here. Some that kind of go off the side of the ear too. And now that I've created that nice texture of hair, I'm going to help to fill it in. Grabbing more of that warm. And don't worry if it seems like it's going to fade into the neckline because we'll just add more layers to the neck. So just adding tiny little hair textures that are longer in the direction of how the hairs appear. Don't want too many of them. I like how that nice white area is still being seen, so it's not one flat color. Just gonna grab a little bit of warmth here and warm up the side of the face. So just doing a nice swipe now that this is dried. And start to layer that on down into the mouth. Add another layer onto the ear. Trying to make that darker. Okay. Smoothing some of those areas out, kind of going around the mouth there. All right, so now working my way on the right side. I'm going to add a little bit of warmth on this side of the head where the ear meets the face. Otherwise, I think we look pretty good on that side. Like just smooth some of this out with some water. Okay, so let's start adding some of the details in the face. So I'm going to take the Van Dyke Brown, going to use not much of it, so very, very light amount, which means more water, less paint. We're just going to start to add some of those little markings around the face and the eyes. So just simply drawing a little mark like this. I'll do another one on this side of the face, starting to shape out the eyes a little bit. And then dabbing my paper towel, still too much paint on my brush, so I just wanted to get rid of some of that. Just add a little bit to the eyebrow. Add a little titch to the edge of the eye. So as a dog portrait will dry, it dries lighter. So I lost my shadow mark in my nose area in a few places along the sides of my face. And I also want to darken up this part because it's getting lost next to the ear. But let's first do the lighter layers, just grabbing some of that excess burnt sienna and yellow ochre, but like barely anything on my brush. Just going to do a few swipes to get those layers back. Some right underneath the eye, around the nose there, this nose side there. I'm just doing some larger swipes. Like that. All right, so now working on down here, Things are feeling drier. So now that it's drier, I can add a darker division between the ear and the face. So here we go with the dark area. People are usually afraid to go too dark, but it's really important to show the value and realistic um, feature and outcome of this dog. So I mixed the brown and the Payne's gray. I'm going to first begin by outlining the ear. So that looks a little too dark. I'm just going to warm it up. Just doing some bigger, wider swipes, staying up closer to where the face is. And then I can fan them out around the ear. So that'll dry lighter. Let's add a little bit more to this side. Just want to grab a little bit more brown. And use that color to help divide from my mouth here of the dog. And again, just swiping it out, warm it up a little bit. Just adding a few more hair textures as I work my way up here. And then some down here. Just adding in a little more depth to show the overlay of those hairs here on the golden. So next, let's start working on the mouth area. I'm going to take my Payne's Gray. Just going to begin by first outlining this mouth, and you want to make sure that everything around it is dry before you do this. You do not want that one to bleed. So I'm just grabbing the Payne's Gray. I'm outlining kind of where that mouth is there, as well as on this side. And trying to leave a little bit of white because that will show the reflection. Painting around the tongue. So just pretty much outlining everything right now, and then we'll start to fill it in. You pick up more. So again, just trying my best to leave little bits of shine of the paper showing through. Dropping in dark color where it should be the darkest on areas. Now I'll get rid of that paint on my brush. I'm just going to use what I have either on my brush or on the paper, and I am going to smooth it out, leaving a little bit of white around the edges. If I need to pick up any paint, I'll pick some up while it's still wet if it's too dark in certain areas. Or if I need to add some more, I want to add some more right underneath the tongue area there. Okay, so while that dries, let's move up to the nose. I want to first begin by doing the nostrils. So using my size 6 brush still pointed around, I'm just first going to start by painting in. Oops, too much paint and water in my brush. I want them to be dark, but I don't want it to pool that much. So I'm just outlining these shapes. I'm just going to paint a little bit of a line out Okay, so now what I want to do next is just grabbing a little bit of that Payne's Gray. I'm first going to begin by outlining kind of like the top and along the bottom half of the nose here. And then I'm going to take my brush, clean it off, and just use a little bit of excess paint, even more so, clean it off. And I am just going to create that base layer of the nose with the Payne's Gray, leaving white highlights, like right above the nostril, trying not to touch them because otherwise they will bleed. Which sounds kind of scary actually when I think about that after I said it, but you know what it means, so they don't expand into each other. If you need to pick up more paint, you can do that, drop it in. Just adding in a little bit more. I just don't want it to be too dark right away. And then trying to work fast enough where my layers aren't drying and leaving weird, harsh outlines. All right, I just have a little bit of that paint still on my brush. I'm just going to take a few little swipes around the outer edge of this nose. Those are always some of my favorite details of the noses, that they have these little dark areas right underneath and on the side. So I'm just using whatever paint I have on my brush. So let's hop back down to the tongue area. It's going to start out by going super light, just picking up a little bit of this red and adding a little bit of orange to it, just to make it a really nice coral pinky color. I'm going to drop that in. Again, just going to add more water, making it really nice and light. Just filling in that shape. Just dropping in a little color if I want to make it a little bit darker. Okay, so now, while I just painted that tongue, I'm going to be really careful and I'm going to take the Payne's Gray, quite a bit of it on my brush. Again, going to outline the mouth at the top, and I'm going to let it expand down into the tongue. And the reason why I'm not going to drop it into the tongue area is because it's going to expand enough, and I don't want it to be too much. Might add a little bit of darkness here without touching the tongue. So just being really cautious about where I'm putting some of this paint color around the wet areas. So I'm letting that expand. And I won't paint the center line down the tongue quite yet because it'll never stay there when it's this wet. So adding a little bit of darkness around. Okay, so while I let that do its thing, you could even take a clean brush and just start to smooth it out if you wanted to help your painting not be quite such a stark line. I think I like the way that's fading out on its own. I'm going to hop back up top here. I'm going to mix some of the Payne's Gray and the brown, but mostly Payne's Gray. So it's just kind of a grayish brown, and that's going to be right underneath my nose area here. Like that, and then we will go through and add texture to that, hair texture. So while I wait for that area to dry, let's work on adding even some more richer hair colors up top here. So I'm going to grab this burnt orange. Otherwise you can just use the burnt sienna. I don't want too much of it, but this is what's going to help to richen this golden color. So I'm just going to paint a few strokes, make them look like hair down here, even maybe some bigger swipes of the paint. Make sure some kind of go off the ear so it looks more natural. Now we want to patch up the top here. I'm going to add a little brown to this so it's not quite so orange. And just do some hairs up top and even some on the outside of the dog's ear. This is where it's starting to come to life. All right, I really like the way that looks. Adding a little pitch to the eye here. Let's work our way down on the left side with the ear, grabbing that warm color we mixed up already. Working it down the side of the face. But now we can start to add another layer of hair. So I'm just using very light pressure of strokes. Even adding some down here. Okay, just adding a little bit of warmth in areas that I think need a little bit more layering. So now, while we wait for those areas to dry, my tongue area is dry enough where I can use a little bit of Payne's Gray to draw the center line down the tongue. So you don't need much paint at all, something just simple like that. And if yours just dried way too light, you can grab some more of the Payne's Gray and run it right along the top of the mouth there. Fix any areas around the tongue that should be darker. Okay, so let's start to build more of those golden layers in the face. I'm just going to switch to a little bit of a larger brush so I can get some wider swipes. We're going to work a lot with this burnt sienna. So just pulling open or mixing up that color, mixing it with a little bit of brown. So I don't want it super orange, but I do want it warm, warmer than what my brown can do. So I'm just going to add a nice extra layer here. Also just going to start to add in dimension around this dog's eyes before I actually paint the eyes. So I'm just going to do a nicer swipe, bigger swipe there. Taking the very fine point of my brush, I want some more paint, so just grabbing more brown, those burnt colors. So you could switch to a smaller brush, but I'm just going to stick with the same one and just press really, really lightly and get some of those areas around the face there, or around the eyes, just to darken those patches that of those shapes we already created. I add a few more little hairs around here. Okay, and now I'm going to get rid of most of that paint on my brush. So I have very little on my brush, and I am going to smooth out, create some shapes like there. Just going to pick some of that up. And then one that kind of goes down here on the side of the face, leaving a little bit of a white shine. Can kind of connect the area of those patches for the eye. There's also another one that runs down the side of the nose. Picked up a little bit of paint, going to add it into the bridge of the nose here. Just doing a few swipes. Also going to add some more dimension to the top of the head with the same paint color. I just did a swipe and then I'll bring it down, but you want to make sure that you're always sculpting in the direction of the hairs to give it that feel that it's a dimensional shape. Again, picking up just ever so slight amount of that color. I'm going to do some down here around the eyes. Do some around the nose here. Fade it into the front. And again, with very, very little paint on my brush, just doing a few strokes as I work my way up the cheekbone. So now there's a nice warm patch right around the nose here. So I'm just going to paint in a nice block of color here. Also a little one that kind of creeps around the top of the nose. I'll just start to smooth it out with my brush. If you picked up too much paint like I did, I'm just going to drop a little bit more in. So I'm just going back through in those areas that we were just painting, making them a little darker. It's nice to do it when it's still wet so then it fades really, really nicely. Okay, so we are getting so close and just need to finish up some of the final details and especially those eyes. So next what I want to do is just simply add another layer to our nose. So I'm just picking up the Payne's Gray and going to add a little bit of an outer edge to our nose and also towards the bottom. So just adding that Payne's Gray inside and pushing it around. Like that. And even add some darker areas up top here. And then I also want to add some of the detail hairs right below. So I'm just mixing up the Payne's Gray and brown and using the very tip of my brush and just painting on some of those hairs, flaring them in different directions. All right, so next let's work on bringing those eyes to life. I'm going to switch to my liner brush, my 000 tiny fine liner brush. And I am using Payne's Gray for the eyes since they're just so nice and dark. I'm going to first begin, now that this is all dry, first begin by outlining the eye shape. So just going slow. A little line that kind of juts out the side there. Let's outline the other eye. So just doing small strokes. Also another one that kind of fans out the side. And then while it's still wet, I'm just going to take my brush and paint tiny, tiny little hairs that jut out on the outside of this eye as well as down below here. And same with this eye. Painting the smallest of hairs. Okay, so there we have the outline of our eyes, and using Payne's Gray again, I'm going to carefully paint in the eye, but leaving white around, and also trying to leave a little bit of a shine towards the top of the eye. So something like that is perfect. And then I'll do the same for this one, leaving little white shiny areas. Can always bring them back at the end when we do our tiny white details with the bleed proof white. But I always strive to try and leave the white shine as I'm painting and know that if I mess up, it'll be okay. Okay, so now I've added those in, and now it's time to start building up the layers around the eyes again. So I'm going to take a little bit of a larger brush using my size 6. I'm going to grab the brown, a little bit of the warm burnt color. This is where I can start to really show the hair texture around this dog's face, especially up in these eyebrows. And send that jet out around. I'm just pressing ever so slightly. Very, very light pressure. Adding some down the center. You could use your liner brush for this. I just like to press really, really lightly with a little bit of a larger brush because the paint goes farther. Don't have to pick as much up. If you ever don't like a stroke like I did there, I'm just going to get rid of the paint on my brush, and then we're just going to smooth it out. Kind of lift it back up. And even paint some that go up a little bit. Let's do some more of those right at the top of the head. So again, you can just continue to add more hairs, but always painting in the direction of how it's shaped up and over around the eyes. Just fill in some of this right here is a little too bright. Just taking some of those light paint colors and filling them in. Back to our darker brown. We got to add a little bit more to this little eyebrow up top here. Adding some down here. So all I'm doing is just starting to add in more of those finishing details around the face. And add some up front here. I'll warm it up a little bit with the burnt sienna. I want to add a little bit of a patch above his nose. Giving a little bit of warmth down here around the face. Even some down here. Making some darker, some lighter. You want to make sure that they kind of flare out. And kind of go in the different directions as the sketch shows a little bit. So I don't want to do every single hair, just picking a few here and there. Like that. Okay, so next all I am going to work on is doing the finishing touches on the face. First, I just want to add a little bit more to the tongue, being a little fussy here. And just gonna grab a little bit more of a layer, just so it's not so flat, looks too flat right now. So grabbing some of that orange, mixing it with the red, dropping color in, picking up water and smoothing it out. All right, so for the final details, I love to use the Dr. Page Martin's Blueproof White, which is an opaque type of paint. It's a little bit thicker, so I like to just pull out what I need and wet it a little bit, but I don't want to make it too thin. Just a nice thicker, milky consistency. And this, with my tiny liner brush, is going to be the tiny little details that I'll use to paint around. So I'm going to start around the mouth here. Some tiny little hairs just kind of jet up over from the nose onto that dark area. Can even add a little bit more of a shine in areas that might have lost some. You especially want to add some little tiny hairs down below here. Could add some in the nose if you lost any. Some around here. I like to add them also down below here just to show a nice variation in the hairs. Don't add too many, just enough. Just pressing really, really lightly. Anything that needs to be kind of lightened, it's nice to go back through. Some on the top of the ears. I always love to add it into the eyes, right above, to show little hairs. A little shine here. Some right up top. Add some into the ear here. Okay, so now the last place that I always like to add it is the whiskers. So I'm just going to pull out a little bit more. So having not a ton on my brush, I'm just going to paint a few. Very light pressure. Let's pick up more. Okay, there is our golden retriever. Okay, how are you feeling after walking through this dog portrait together? I really hope today's class has you feeling so excited about painting more pet portraits in the future, whether it be for gifts or to earn an income. I know our time was limited today, so I could only cover how to paint a golden retriever. But the beautiful thing is that this palette of 8 paint colors will allow you to paint hundreds of different dog breeds. Truly, this paint palette is all you really need to paint any dog in the world. Now, if you're thinking, how do I even begin to paint a dog portrait other than a golden retriever? Well, one way is you can just dive in and practice painting dogs on your own, playing around with color mixing and hair texture techniques. But if that intimidates you and you'd rather have guidance just like in this class, then I'd like to invite you to join me inside of my course, Master Watercolor Dog Breeds. Master Watercolor Dog Breeds will teach you how to paint 31 different dogs that will grow your watercolor skills with confidence and also provide you with the knowledge and painting practice that it takes to become a pet portrait artist. Here's what you'll get when you sign up for Master Watercolor Dog Breeds. You'll get 31 dog painting lessons, just like today's class, taught in bite-sized video lessons. The videos can be paused, slowed down, sped up, allowing you to find your perfect pace for your skill level. So in addition to all the dog painting lessons, there's a module dedicated to teaching essential brushstrokes, color mixing, and supplies guide for watercolor pet portraits. This is a great module if you are new to watercolor. You'll also get outlines for each dog so you can skip the stress of sketching and focus on painting. You will receive instant and lifetime access to the course. This is a go-at-your-own-pace course, so you can take as long or as little to work through the course in each dog breed. You'll also receive any updates that I make to the course into the future. In addition to all of this, you'll also be getting extra special bonuses. The first bonus is lifetime access into a private Facebook community to get additional guidance and meet other artists. This is valued at $147 a year that you'll get for free. You'll also receive a module covering my top tips on getting started and running a pet portrait business, if that is your goal. This bonus alone is valued at $297 that you'll get at no extra cost. With these amazing bonuses and over 40 hours of video lessons, Master Watercolor Dog Breeds is valued at over $4,000. But because I want to help as many people as possible learn how to confidently paint watercolor pet portraits, I keep the price affordable at $297. But what's even better is because you signed up for this free class, I'm offering you an extra $100 off the entire course, including lifetime access and the special bonuses, making it an amazing deal of $197. I don't want the cost to hold you back from finding joy and success in painting pet portraits. You'll also be able to try it risk-free for 7 days. So if you give the course a try and you find it's just not for you, you'll have up to 7 days to contact me for a full refund on the course. I'll leave a link at the bottom of the screen where you can learn more and enroll in the course. This week is the lowest price the course will ever be. Denise, one of the students inside of Master Watercolor Dog Breed, said, "If you've ever wanted to learn to paint pet portraits, this is a terrific class. Ellie takes you through some basic watercolor techniques at the beginning, so class is good even if you are newer to watercolor, and breaks down the process for each dog in easy steps. It was so much fun seeing each dog come together, and I was really amazed at what I accomplished. I can't wait to take another class." If you're having doubts on whether to invest in this course because you feel like you're not talented enough or too much of a beginner, I've created this course to help you overcome the hurdle of getting started, receive the guided practice so you don't have to figure it out alone, know what supplies will produce the best possible paintings, learn the steps to simplify the painting process, and follow through on your dream of painting pet portraits. Penny Mars was also a beginner watercolor artist when she decided to join Master Watercolor Dog Breeds. I began this course with very minimal watercolor experience, but Allie's step-by-step approach helped my confidence and skills grow with each progressive lesson. The variety of breeds covered provides students with exposure to a wide variety of fur types, coat colors, and spotted patterns. Knowledge which can definitely be applied to future animal portraits. I came away from this class better prepared to handle watercolor itself and paint animals that I might have shied away from at first. This course has helped hundreds of students kickstart their pet portrait journey. Students have been able to connect inside the private Facebook group, and this community continues to support each other through this course and beyond. Shannon Blackerby said, "Loved this class, and the support of the community for accountability and encouragement is a wonderful bonus. Another perk of the bonus private Facebook community is the ability to ask for feedback and questions that you may run into along the way." Nicole, an active member inside of the community, says, Allie truly has a gift and wishes for all of her students to succeed. She broke down each step flawlessly within the course. On the Facebook page, she was actively commenting words of encouragement, providing tips, and sharing more of her knowledge. It really felt like I was taking a class alongside her in person. This course is highly recommended for anyone interested in watercolor dog portraits, from beginner to expert. Let me remind you that I too had to start somewhere back in 2018 when someone asked if I could paint their dog. Having never painted a dog in watercolor before, it was intimidating to say the least. And I've had failed portrait attempts and have given up in the ugly stages. But over time, and hundreds of portraits later, I figured out the best supplies, brushstroke techniques, layering, and color mixing techniques to create an approachable process for painting a realistic dog that can be applied to all types of dogs. This is what I'll share with you inside of Master Watercolor Dog Breeds. Sally said, Master Watercolor Dog Breeds class is a tremendous value. It is taught in bite-sized chunks, and Allie is very good at explaining what she's doing, how she's doing it, and giving encouragement along the ugly stages of a portrait, explaining it's just part of the process and how it will all come together in the end. And it does. I can't remember the last time someone was able to keep me engaged for a full 31 days in a row with a smile on my face. So, can you imagine in 1 month from now if you dedicated just 1 hour a day to learning how to paint a new dog breed, how much confidence you will have in your watercolor pet portrait skills? Don't let another month pass by wishing you had already started. So, I'm going to wrap up today's class, but don't forget that this free class will expire in just 7 days, and the $100 off Master Watercolor Dog Breeds will also expire too. After this week, the course goes back to full price. So if you are ready, save $100 and get started on your pet portrait journey today. Thanks so much for joining me today. Please reach out with any questions, connect with me over on Instagram, and let me know what you thought of today's class. I hope I will see you all soon, and happy painting.